Yeah, there are really a couple things that employers right now should be doing either to prepare for issue 3 or to educate their employees. I think the first thing is to make sure that the employees of a small employer understand what their employer thinks about the issue. There's no legal reason why an employer can't tell his or her employees what the employer's position is on medical marijuana and recreational marijuana, and specifically issue 3 with all the parts of issue 3 that might be objectionable to that particular employer. So first of all, educate your employees. They want to know what you think. The second thing is to check your insurance coverage. There are a couple areas where employers are likely to be vulnerable. One is general liability, because employees may be under the influence and engage in some type of wrongful activity that results in injuries. You want to make sure that you've got adequate coverage, and you want to make sure that there is no portion of that coverage or no exclusion for something that happens because somebody's under the influence when the incident occurs. The other insurance that you want to make sure that you look at is employer practices liability insurance, and that's the kind of insurance that if your employee sues you for wrongfully terminating them, you can go to the insurance company. They will defend you and potentially pay the damages if you are found to have acted improperly. And because we don't know what's going to happen with all these potential claims by employees against their employers, I think it's really prudent to take a look at getting employer practices liability insurance. EPLI is the terminology.
What do employers have to do differently in the state of Ohio if issue 3 passes? Well, hopefully issue 3 doesn't pass and they won't have to do anything differently. But in the event it does pass, they will have to address their drug-free workplace policy that currently exists and make sure that it complies with Ohio law. Secondly, and most importantly, employers will have to be more diligent about drug testing their employees. Those employers that do pre-employment drug testing presently will need to look at random selection in addition to pre-employment. Those employers that are doing random selection and pre-employment drug testing need to look at the percentage of employees that they randomly select for drug testing. Under the current paradigm, 5 to 10% of the employees being tested offers enough of a deterrent. However, if marijuana becomes legal in the state of Ohio, we're going to have to bump that up from 5 to 10% to 10 to 25%. And if an employer is running a second and third shift in their place of business, they need to look at bumping random drug testing to about 35%.
The question is, what do you best do to get ahead of this, which is a fair question. Right now, I will leave to greater minds where issue 3 is going, and if it's likely to pass. I would go slow to do any radical changes to whatever policy you may have, but I think the avenues are more broad than I believe a lot of people may believe. That you have, as an employer, zero obligation, legal obligation, to tolerate any drug usage in your workplace. And if you were to decide that I want nothing to do with marijuana with my employees, not only on the job or at home, I have a zero tolerance policy, you can do that. I would caution clients that if they do that, like so many policy decisions, think through maybe the unintended consequences. Because if you have such a policy, I think there's a couple of factors. One, most employers don't test today. It's expensive. It is, I think, intrusive, and a lot of people view it as a violation of their independence, maybe not of their rights, but it's an integrity issue. And so you can have a mandatory test and think what you're going to do if your very best salesperson turns up positive. Turns out he's been a user for a decade. It's got nothing to do with issue 3, but now you've spotted him. What do you do? Because I'm confident that if you decide to give him or her a pass because, well, he can handle it, he's fantastic, but him or her in the shop is gone, you have got at least the possibility, and it strikes me as a meaningful possibility, of targeting someone who is now in a protected class, a woman, a minority, some person, and you have stepped into something that you didn't have to because you had a mandatory policy. So, you know, like every business decision, think what you're doing before you implement it.